Okay, let's look at Hollenspiel's House of Normandy. This is designed by Tom Russell. Now, if you're looking for kind of a how to play, take a look at Tom's video first. He does it in 6 minutes, and it'll get you started right away. You know, it's basically his con spiel for how to get people jumping into this. This is... all right. So, I'm a little late on the Hollenspiel bandwagon or whatever, in terms of trying out their games at least. This is one that the series has interested me, and it was put out, I think Flying Pig put it out, some of the original series, and this is the second iteration of the series. The games aren't backward compatible. Nor, I think, are the original ones forward compatible. I think there's significant changes. The topic, which is medieval tactical battles, is tremendously interesting to me. When I first looked at this series, I had the, I'm really interested in this. My initial reaction was, it looks simple, and probably I did a little bit more research at that point and said, it may even look simpler than Men of Iron. And I have to say it is, essentially. And when I look at Men of Iron, I'm kind of like, wow, that's a little too simple for me. Although I've been turning more towards it. When I hit Arquebus over there, I don't know if you can see it. I can't play with my zoom, so I can't jump in. I could walk. When I hit Arquebus over there, I began to realize that, you know, you start overloading that system and problems come with it. So anyway, this was, out of all of the games that Hollenspiel did, the one I was most interested in actually purchasing, because of the topic. And I kind of forgot that he had already dismissed this series. I was looking at it and thought, well, you know, this is covering other battles. How much simpler than Men of Iron can it really be? Well, so you might see that I'm a little predisposed to not being amiable to what the level of play that this is going to handle. We'll see how it works out. It does show some interesting aspects that you wouldn't expect in such a simple game. So, for example, it's got these little command chits, which we'll talk about it. But they're not, yeah. Anyway, I ended up saying, okay, you know, Hollenspiel has a sale. Let's look at their games, figure out what I want. This was number one on the list. The other two that I picked up were kind of, one of them I had played before and wasn't sure whether or not I liked. It's turned out that I've developed a fair amount of respect for it. I'm not sure I needed to own it because I'm not convinced I'll ever play it solo again. I don't know, maybe without video it'll be more fun solo. It's kind of mind-blowing, and that's Infamous Traffic. And then the other one's Supply Lines of the American Revolution, which I definitely want to take a look at, because, again, it's a different take on things. And I feel like Hollenspiel is kind of doing that, kind of working its way into little niches. Okay, let's start taking a look at these rules, but components-wise, comes with a couple of maps. That one's very, very plain. This one gives you a little bit of terrain and some markings on it, probably used for one scenario. They each have a number up on top so you can differentiate. The counter mix. Fairly generic. It has a few different types of troops and a few different valuations, and you can play the 4 scenarios here with very few counters because of that. So instead of, you know, going into a lot of specifics, it kind of takes more of an Ancient Battles Deluxe type of feel, which is, hey, these are the counters that you need, you know, to play the scenarios here, and you mix and match them as needed, and that works just fine. There is a certain genericity to the counters, though, which is to be expected. We'll see how that works out in terms of giving us a fair narrative. So anyway, a given counter has a number of pieces of information on it. This is the unit type letter, and in this case it's heavy horses. Infantry are basically, it's their, quality that's their unit type. So these guys have an L, they're levy. These guys have a V, they're veteran. And we have some infantry as well. I don't know, I thought I had some on the board. I can show you. Okay, I'm swearing I had some on the board. I don't know, they've got little halberds or whatever. There they are. Short, kind of like mercenary infantry. You also have a combat class, which is sort of their effectiveness within that. And some of the units, if they're flipped over, well, they have a damage side. Some of the units, if they're flipped over, have a different combat class on the other side. And that's going to affect how they operate under combat. And some, let's see if we have any here. We'll have a little number under that combat class, like this. That's their fire factor, pretty much their to-hit number on firing. Hey, they got a picture there. Okay. Some of the units on the back side of the unit will have a little crown. There's one there. You can hardly see it. And I can't zoom with this camera. That's going to be an additional victory point impact of that counter. It's kind of hidden from your opponent. You can only see the face of the counter that's actually available. So until the unit's damaged, you don't realize, where the important noble is that you'd be wanting to take out of place. Some units will not have a backside. They're eliminated if they take a hit. You have these command markers, and you have a mix that give you different things you can order your units to do. They're backsided, so if you order a unit to do one thing, then you can't use that same chit for something else on your turn. There's an initiative marker, which gives the player who holds it an advantage the ability to basically trump in and take a double turn. There are suppression markers, which I believe are these black things. They indicate you've taken fire, and the fire's been effective enough that it's slowing down your movement and making you a little easier to beat up. Your movement's reduced to 1 hex. I believe it has an effect on combat. Yep. UTMM and CRT on the back here. We have a unit type modifier matrix, which is going to be, this is similar to kind of the Men of Iron, Great Battles of History, I think even Ancient Battles Deluxe comparison between unit types, but instead of a lot of detail, these are spearmen with this, it's really just the unit quality type facing whether or not they're mounted. So, it's a little less, it's not going to give you a way to investigate the different weapon systems of the era, particularly. So you're not going to get, hey, pikes versus sword and shield or something like that, like we got. Arquebus went really heavily into that, and I felt like it was kind of painful, the degree to which it does. This should be much, much easier to cope with. And you have a combat results table, which looks pretty simple. I think this is we'll see. We won't say anything. I have read these rules a couple days ago, and things pass through my brain so quickly. So the sequence of play, it's an I go, you go type of situation, sort of. However, what you do is you assign your command tokens, and that'll be restricted by the scenario. So in some cases, you may be only able to move, say, 1 wing. The French are only able to move 1 wing at a time in this game. By giving them commands, you generally can give more than 1 command to a wing. The scenario we're going to look at first. Allows you to put 2 on a wing, I think. Then you carry out your actions, and these are ordered differently than they show up in the rules, which might seem to be kind of a pet peeve to some people that are like, oh, you should always have the sequence of play followed by the rules order. Well, there's reasons that it doesn't. It manages to keep these rules into a pretty small little set. So 7 pages, including that, so 6 pages of rules. That's, at this typeface, that's fairly light. So first you'd be firing, then you take care of horse actions, which are kind of basically a charge type situation. Then you're allowed to withdraw units, assign units to shield wall, actually move units. Units that are in shield wall are not going to move or fight in quite as effective of a manner. Then you get another move phase if you've got a double move, and then you get to actually fight, and you might get to fight again. There's counters. There's ways of selecting the orders so you get to fight twice or move twice. If you have the initiative marker, you can give it to the other player and take a double turn. There's no trumping in or, this is your ability to control the swing in the battle. And there's something kind of, elegant about that rather than having to make all kind of die rolls and stuff. But makes it more chess-like though. Each color that you have on the board is one of your wings. That's what you're going to assign the commands to. At the beginning of a phase, you have to determine whether your levy and infantry units are near enough to veteran or horse units. If there are veteran or horse units, you have to be, each of your levy or infantry units has to be within 6 hexes of one of them, or else it will be eliminated, and that'll count towards your victory points. So you got to keep your wings together. If you don't have veteran or horse units in the wing, however, if they've all been destroyed, then you just have to be within 4 hexes of 2 other units in your wing. Now there's something a little weird about that, which is if the horses of your wing run off on, to charge after someone, your entire wing collapses and doesn't kind of split into 2 wings, essentially. That disturbs me a little bit. I know that there are historical examples where something like a single command, a unified command, the horse chases off and pursues the enemy. The infantry still stands. So that worries me a little bit here as to how accurately this is going to represent situations in general. Okay, you got a bonus flag. I think that's this thing. That's going to allow you to play to bonus one of your command markers. So, you might take, you might take an attack with a bonus on it, and that would give you the double attack. And we'll look at how these work. So bonus and move means you get 2 moves. That second move phase. Bonus in combat means you have an option to either do a second combat or for your first combat to have a modifier that'll make your troops a little better for it. Bonus and withdraw allows you to do the withdrawal action a little bit more effectively. I don't have the picture for withdrawal. I don't have any of these pictures. There they are. Okay, so the withdraw is the horn. That would be a nice, there it is, a nice little thing to have a cheat sheet for. Bonus and fire gives you a modifier to your fire combat. You still only fire once, but you have a better chance of it. Bonus and horse. Your CC combat class is increased by 2 or 1 combat class when you do the charges. Bonus and shield wall gives you the option to do sort of a to form shield wall and withdraw at the same time, which could be very, very helpful because shield wall is essentially a defensive maneuver. Therefore, being able to pull back would make sense. Now remember, most wings are going to be taking 2 orders. I don't know if that's across the board, but okay. Let's look at what happens in your actual different activations. So the move phase, only 1 unit can occupy a hex, but you are allowed to move through friendly units. You can't stack, however. You can't move through enemy units. There are enemy zones of control. Well, there are zones of control. When you enter an enemy zone of control, you must end your movement in that zone. If you begin your movement in an enemy zone of control, you are not allowed to move. You're only allowed to withdraw from it. You may not move through friendly units that are in an enemy zone of control. The map edge, if you have to retreat off the map edge, you take a step loss instead. If reinforcements come on, you count the first hex that you move on the board as a movement hex. That's no big deal. Okay. Units that are in shield wall are not generally allowed to move. They can't move during the move phase. And suppressed units, guys who've been shot at, can only move 1 hex. If you get a second move phase, you do all the units that are getting the first move phase, and then you go to the second move phase and run a little faster. In the withdrawal phase, you can only do 1. If you're in an enemy zone of control, you may move 1 hex, 2 if you've got the bonus. As long as you move away from the enemy zone of control, don't move into another enemy zone of control, and end the phase completely free of enemy zone of control. Combat phase. If you bonus your combat marker, there it is, you'll get the option to do 2 combat phases or to bonus your combat phase. Attacks are completely optional. You get to do them sequentially and decide to do them as you go, but each unit can only attack once in each combat phase. Okay. First, you declare an attack. You identify who's going to be attacking it. And each unit can only be attacking once in each combat phase. And you can only hit each enemy once in each combat phase. You have to have the units, the defending unit in your zone of control. You can't cross wings when making an attack, which is to say all the units that are making a single die roll for attack against a single unit have to be from the same wing. Okay, you pick 1 unit which has the best CC rating, and I can't remember what combat class. I keep wanting to call it like a combat command or something, you know, because of combat commander or commanded colors. No. All other friendly units participating in the same attack will be participating units who modify it. Horse that are participating in attacks made by one another. Wait, horse units may participate in attacks made by one another, but may not participate in attacks made by foot units. Nor may foot units participate in horse attacks. So they're almost like separate wings. If multiple units have the same best base command class, combat class, whatever the fuck it is, you get to choose which unit is your primary. Okay. Then your combat class is bonused, penalized in some cases. No. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. If the target is suppressed, you get a +1. If you've chosen to use the flag as a bonus, you get a +1 to your combat class. If you're attacking downhill, there's no hill in this first scenario. Looks like there might be something here. I don't know what this shit is. You get a +1. You get a penalty to your combat class if the target is a shield wall, or if you're in shield wall. Well, and if you're in shield wall, it's an and/or. They're cumulative. Combat classes can't go above AA, and they can't go below F. And we don't have anything there. Okay. Now you determine the die roll modification. You cross-reference the primary units type with the target unit type on the matrix, and you'll get a modifier. So like infantry attacking veterans gets a +1. Is that good? Yes. No. I'm not sure. Heavy horse attacking levy is a -1. I am guessing minuses are good. Okay. Yeah. And those range from +2 all the way up to -1. Each participating unit that has the same CC base as the primary unit gives you a -1. And every 2 units of a lower CC rounded up gives you a -1. These appear to be completely cumulative. You roll a die and cross-reference it to the modified CC rating of your primary unit. And then you read a result. And the results are pretty simple. They're eliminations, which just remove the whole unit. They're step losses, the L's. If a unit's already taken a step loss and takes a second one, it's destroyed. They're retreats. Exchanges, the defending unit loses a step and one of the attacking units loses a step. Doesn't have to be your lead unit. Okay, some of the results have asterisks. If they do, and the attack is a shield wall, the attacker can take this as an exchange instead. No, the target's a shield wall, which is just basically saying, okay, instead of getting a defender retreat or no effect, I'm going to push this result, and we're both going to take more losses. We're going to, challenge your defense directly. If heavy horse is the primary attacker and you get an exchange, instead, you can allow the defender to retreat, not pressing the attack as hard. This may allow you to to damage the unit doing step losses because they can't retreat. If light horse is the primary attacker and you get an exchange, the attacker can treat this as an attacker's retreat instead, which makes sense. Light horse aren't pressing the charge quite as much. Instead of pushing the battle, you decide to fall back and not take losses. If light horse is defending and they take an exchange, the defender can take this as a defender retreat. Now, given the order that these are written in, I would say that the decision has to be made in that order. I don't know, or maybe it can be made in either order. What's interesting about this is the attacker might not be all light horse. So heavy horse might be supporting light horse for some reason. Maybe the combat classes for the heavy horse are shitty. I don't know. And the light horse is really good. In which, I don't know if that can be the case here. I don't know if there is any light horse in this game. This scenario doesn't seem to have any. This set of scenarios, which makes sense. So, I'm not sure whether or not this ever applies, but it might be possible that light horse are leading the attack because of their combat class and are able to pull the heavy horse into a retreat with them. The actual retreat, you must move 1 hex away from the attacking units and away from all enemy zone of controls. If you're attacking units, you also have to. You may not move through or push friendly units. If you can't retreat, you don't move and you take a step loss. However, if you're in shield wall, you don't have to retreat, period. You don't ever retreat, or you just don't have to. It says they ignore all retreats without penalty. It doesn't sound like there's a choice. It's not clear. But shield walls seem predisposed not to retreat, which means I wouldn't give the choice. If it didn't, I don't know. If it didn't say without penalty, I would just say there's no may in there. So I feel like that's the way this is intended. Okay, second or pitched combat phase. If you played your flag and decided not to take a bonus in combat, you get 2 rounds of combat instead. So after you fought, you get to launch an additional set of attacks with all the effects that they have. When an enemy unit is eliminated or retreats during an attack, one of the attacking or supporting units can move into that vacated hex regardless of any ZOC effects in there. If the defenders repel or eliminate the attackers, they don't get an advance. Pretty standard stuff there. Units in shield wall cannot advance. Units cannot advance uphill if there's an enemy zone of control exerted on the hex. I don't know what the hex is. It says 12.1. I doubt this tells me anything. Oh, it does. High ground, moving or attacking from lower to... Units that are attacking uphill may not advance into the vacated hex unless in doing so they enter no enemy zone of control. So it's the hex they're entering that can't have a zone in it, which kind of makes sense. I don't know. Where were we? Charging heavy horse units are required to advance if able, but this is optional for everything else. Okay, on to some of the more special ones, and I think I'm going to have to split this sucker into 2, which is not that big a deal anymore, just because I'm getting really nervous about how long I have on the video. By length of video, I obviously meant amount of battery I have remaining. You can see why you want to listen to Tom's explanation rather than mine. I am A, learning it, and B, no matter what, I'm going to take forever on these things. So if you want to just get a quick but if you want to look at the experience of reading the rule book, well, this is where you come. Okay. Or if you're just here for the ASMR fun, whatever. I don't understand it particularly, but okay. A wing can do a shield wall. At the beginning of the player, until the beginning of the player's next turn, all the infantry type of units, veteran, levy, and infantry units that don't have a fire factor are considered to be in shield wall. It says they fight at -1 CC. No, they attack at -1 CC. Well, they give -1 CC to the enemy attacker, which is the second part, but they attack at -1 CC. Fight is too generic a term, minor quibble, and it's clear. They ignore all retreat results. They don't get to, they ignore. It's very clear. They can't advance. Enemy fire gets a penalty, and they cannot move during the move phase. They're allowed to move a hex as long as they're not in an enemy zone of control. If you use the bonus with it, there's got to be a shield here. Now, what's the shield on the opposite of? It's on the opposite of, I guess that's a horse. No? Oh, what the hell that is. It's on the opposite of a move. Yeah, so I don't think there is. This is the British combination. They don't have, I'm sorry, not the British. I don't know who the hell they are. This is the red side. I don't think they have a move there. The counter is similar. Shield wall and move are opposite. Horse and bow are opposite. Flag is opposite flag. And horn is opposite shield. So in this case, this is all the command counters for this set of scenarios. In this case, it looks like each player has the same set. Certainly for this next scenario, but it would be really unlikely. I guess if somebody has no horse and the other guy has many, and somebody has no archers, you might give 2 of that counter to someone, but it looks like everybody's going to be standing with the same set of command counters for all the games in this particular set. That may not be the case in all of the scenarios under the system. Okay, what do we got here? Heavy horse and light horse units and any units with a fire factor don't go into shield wall, and they don't get these benefits or restrictions. The units that go into shield wall actually have a shield on their icon. Okay. Fire phase. If you have a fire factor, those units can perform one fire phase during the player turn. Each of these units is allowed to do one fire combat instance. You declare it. It doesn't have to be ahead of time. You can pulse them as you like. Each fire, then you figure out modifiers and you roll. You can shoot the same enemy unit multiple times, but each unit fires alone. Only units that are not adjacent to enemy units can fire. They can only fire at an enemy unit that is up to 4 hexes away. You add 2 hexes to this distance, though, if you're sitting on high ground, because the arrows can shoot further if they're dropping. And the target does not. Light horse units with a fire rating are not eligible for the range bonus. We don't have any of them. There might be some line of sight issues in a particular scenario. You roll a die. You subtract 1 for shield wall at the target. You add 1 if you're on, you subtract 1 if the firing unit's on high ground and the target does not. No, you add 1. Sorry, it's really hard for me to see pluses and minuses, I guess. Here. If you're shooting at horse, you get a +1. It's bigger, it's easier to hit. And if you used your bonus counter on a fire, you get a +1. You roll a die, and you're trying to get the number or higher on your fire thingy. We have no fire units in this scenario, so we look over here. So like here, he'd need to get an 8 or higher. He'd need to get a 7 or higher. If you succeed, the suppression marker gets placed on the unit. That makes the unit slow, and it increases any primary attacker's combat class by 1. I hate abbreviations, especially if they're ones I'm used to somewhere else. Okay, even from different fields of endeavor. Okay, all the suppression markers are removed at the end of your own player turn, kind of like a rally phase in great battles in the American Civil War, right? Okay, horse phase, heavy and light horse can do 1 horse phase during a horse turn, during a player turn, whatever. During the phase, you can move up to 3 hexes. If you were in an enemy zone of control, you can generally still move, but you still have to stop when you hit an enemy zone of control. However, a heavy horse enemy zone of control prevents adjacent horse units from moving out of it. Only heavy horse. If you, I guess it's kind of countercharge. After you move, then any, all, or none of the horse units that are in an enemy zone of control can attack the enemy. This is called a charge. It's resolved as a normal attack, and only horse units can attack or support. If you use a bonus marker during this, the charge adds to your combat class. 2 for heavies, 1 for light. There was something here about charging, was there not? I thought there was, but maybe I'm just thinking about that particular facet. The initiative phase, I've already pretty much explained it. You just pass the token over and you get another turn. Some terrain features. We've talked a little bit about high ground already. If you're attacking uphill, you can't advance into an enemy zone of control. If you're attacking from higher to lower, you get a bonus to your combat class. Firing gets a bonus to range and to their shooting range, to their shooting effect. Rivers are impossible, at least in this game, but in this series games that have them, they're impassable instead. Trenches are a hexside feature. Attacking across them drops your combat class. These might be trenches. I don't know. We'll see when we hit the scenario. Victory points. You will generally count them by eliminating units, which will be, their value will be specified in the scenario. The crown is usually worth 2 extra victory points over other units of that type. Whoever's got the mostest wins is, and that's it. Like I said, it's a very, very simple game. How much will it give in terms of narrative, in terms of information? What it's not going to give you is different tactical systems. And that's kind of a shame. How much difference in tactical systems are there? I don't know in the scenarios we're looking at. We're looking at Normans versus Normans here, so it probably is pretty solid. It does give you the difference in tactical systems between, you know, bow-heavy forces. To me, it feels like a light archer force is going to have a really hard time defeating a regular force. Like, you know, consider the horse archers of the Mongols or something like that. I'd be curious to see how that works out. We're not going to see anything like that here, though. Again, we're seeing singular weapon system or tactical systems in play, really a Norman versus Norman. These are going to be, this is based around largely the Civil War between Stephen and Matilda. And if you've played Warriors of God, you should be familiar with that. And there's a preliminary, the first scenario that we're going to look at is actually predates that. I think it's one of Henry's battles. We'll look at that at the moment, you know, when we get to it. But right now, it sounds like I got some emails I got to deal with.